Hello everyone. Last time I introduced the object-oriented programming to you. In today's lecture, I want to teach everyone how to use object-oriented programming or OOP to write classes and objects on your own so that you can use the OOP concept to develop some software or applications in the future. Before we move to today's lecture, let's have a quick review on the concept of OOP. Object-oriented programming consists of two important concepts, classes and objects. What is a class? A class is a model that summarizes the common features or properties that a group of something has. An object is a particular individual out of the class. For example, in the Super Mario Bros. Game, no matter how many bad guys we have, we summarize the key features into a bad guy class. So in the future, if we want to initiate a particular individual, such as a devil mushroom, a flying turtle, out of the class, we just copy from the bad guy class and then put all the key features that the bad guy class summarized into the particular individual. By doing this, we can save development time and effort. In this lecture, I want to teach everyone how to use OOP to write classes and objects. I want to use an example to show you. I want to create a class called a player. We find that no matter who the player is, each player should have a first name and a last name. In this class, I want to record these two information. Next time, if I have a new player sign up in my game, I can ask his or her first name and last name, and then use the player class to develop the player's data record. I also want to develop a method called change last name in the player class. Just in case some player get married, they want to change their last name, we can use the change last name method to change the player's last name. As I told everyone before, a Java or Android program consists of variables and methods. So when we develop a class, we also need to consider variables and methods. If you look at this class, we have two variables and one method. The two variables are first name and last name. We don't know what the values will be for the two variables, so we develop these two variables in the class. Also, we need to develop a method called change last name. So I want to show you how to develop this class. A very nice feature of Java or Android development is you don't have to have fancy computers to write code. You can use the basic software offered by your PC to develop programming code. I'm using a Windows PC, so in this lecture, I will use the Notepad software to write the code. In eCollege, I also listed an online computing system so that you can copy and paste your code into the online system to test the result. If you are also using a Windows PC, you can open the Notepad software, like you can see here. If you cannot find it, you can type in Notepad in the search bar, and then you are able to find this software. We will write the programming code into it. If you are using a Mac computer, you can use the text editor offered by Mac, but make sure that you don't have any format in the text editor. You simply use the text editor software. You don't allow any format in the editor. Let's develop the player class. Because Java is a case-sensitive language, you must use the same letters and cases I write in the Notepad software if you want to try out this example. If you want to write a class, the first thing you want to give is public class. Notice that they are all in lower cases, right? This tells the software you want to develop a class. and then write the class name. It's called a player. Notice that the first letter of the class name must be in uppercase. This is the rule defined by Java. Let me repeat. The first letter of the class name must be in uppercase. This is required. And then after the class name, you type in a set of curly braces. And then all the variables and methods will be given between the curly braces. In order to show the relationship clear, I will put the closing curly braces to the end. And then I want to create the variables I use. I have two variables, first name and last name, right? Because they will be given textual values, they should be in string type. And also I want to specify that they should be private variable. I will explain why. Let me type in the codes first, and then I will explain. I want to type in private string first name, and then semicolon, and then create a new line, and then type in private string last name. Here I have some indent before the variable statement. I want to use these indents to show the statements I develop inside of the class belong to the class. But if you don't use any indents in front of the statements, it doesn't matter. It will not make any difference. Here I have a public class, but private variables. The reason is, I develop a class so that everyone can use it, right? That's why we want to make a class to be public. However, we don't want other people to mess up our development code. That's why we want to make variables to be private. That's the difference between public class but private variables. The next step is very important. We want to develop something called a constructor. The purpose of a constructor is to tell our code user how they should use our class. Do you remember in Excel software, we frequently use some functions, right? When we use a function, we must follow some format. For example, in this case, I want to count the total number of customer orders. I want to use the sum function. So in the yellow cell, I must type in equal sign, sum, parentheses, and then select the range of the customer orders, right? And then we are able to calculate the total number of customer orders. Let's take a look at the sum function. In the sum, why we have to type in sum? Why we have to select a range? Because Microsoft developers specify us to do so. Now we are not the software users. We are the software developers. When we develop a function or a class, we have to tell our customers how to use our class. We need to specify this, how to use the class by developing a constructor. Let me show you. Let's go back to Notepad. Right after the last name statement, let's create a new line and then type in public player and then parentheses and then curly braces. Let's put the closing curly brace to the end. When we have a new player sign up in the game, we want the new player to give us his or her first name and last name. We don't know what the values at this moment. A player could give us any first name and last name, any value, right? We don't know the values are. So let's create two new variables between the parentheses to represent the user's input. Between the parentheses, I want to type in string and then fname. This represents the first name the user will give to me, and then a comma, and then type in string lname. This represents the last name the user will give to me. Here we have two sets of first name and last name, right? But they represent different things. The variable first name and the last name, these two represent the variables that consist of the class. The variables f name and l name, they represent the user's value, the user's input. Between the curly braces after player constructor, between the inner curly braces, we want to create a new line. I want to type in first name equals to f name, and then a semicolon. In the new line, I want to type in last name equals to l name. What this means is when the user gives us the first name and the last name values, no matter what they are, we want to give them to the variables inside of our class. And then our programming code can process these values and then finally give the result to the user. Notice that when you create a constructor, the constructor name must be as same as the class name. So if you have a player class, the constructor name should be player. In each class, we must have a constructor. I told you the purpose of a constructor. It teaches the user how to use our class or functions, right? So if you don't offer a constructor, the user is not able to give the values to your class. That's why we must have a constructor inside of the class. Also notice that we have a public in front of a constructor name. The reason is we want to give the constructor as an interface to the user so that they can give us values, right? That's why we want to make a constructor public as well. Next, we want to develop the method change last name, just in case someone will get married and then change the last name. Between the two ending curly braces, we want to create a new line. This new line will be between the two ending curly braces, right? And then let's create some indents. And then type in public void change last name. And then parentheses. And then curly braces. Let's press enter to put the ending curly brace to the end. Similar to a constructor, when we want to give the change last name method to the user must give us a new last name. We don't know what the new last name value is, right? That's why we want to create another variable between the parentheses to represent the unknown value. So between the parentheses, let's type in string new l name. This represents the value that the user will give to us. We don't know what the value is at this moment, right? That's why between the parentheses, we want to create a variable to represent it. So in this case, if a user gives us a new last name, we want to give this new last name to the class variable last name. Between the curly braces, I want to create a new line. Let's type in last name equals to new l name, and then semicolon. By doing this, we can give this a new value to the last name variable. And then if you want to process this value, you can continue. We have changed the player's last name. It will be better if we can print this new value to the player. Here we need to use a method given by Java to print this message. If a method is given by Java, we don't have to develop the method again. We can import this method into our class. Here is how to use the method given by Java. It's called system.out.print and then parentheses. Between parentheses, I want to type in two double quotes and then type in your new last name is, and then out of the double quote I want to type in a plus sign and then type in last name, this variable. At the end, don't forget the semicolon. System.out.print is a method given by Java. It can help you to print a message, textual message, on the user's computer screen. Notice that the first letter S is in uppercase. Other than that, all letters are in lower cases. So you need to remember these rules when you use system.out.print method. By doing this, we can show the new last name value on the user's computer screen. After this step, we have completed our first class. Now we have a new question. How can we use this player class to develop the 3 player objects? Do you remember we have 3 players, right? How can we use the player class to record the players' names? Let me show you. Between the 2 ending curly braces, let's create a new line. And then type in public static void main parentheses string args and then square bracket. And then after the parentheses, let's type in another set of curly braces. Here we have a statement, public static void main and string args, right? This is required. If you want to use a class to develop objects, we must type in this statement. And between the inner curly braces, we need to type in player. And then let's type in player1. And then equals to new player. And then parentheses. Between parentheses, we need to type in the first player's first name and last name. Because they are textual values, so we must include the first name and last name values by using 2 double quotes. The first player's name is John Williams. So between the parentheses, let's type in 2 double quotes and then type in John. And then between the second double quote and the closing parentheses, let's type in a comma and then another set of 2 double quotes and then type in Williams between the 2 double quotes. And don't forget the semicolon at the end. Because John and Williams are 2 textual values, so when we give these 2 values to our class, we must include each textual value by 2 double quotes. Some classmates may have a question about the comma in the middle. The reason we require users to separate the 2 values by a comma is that we develop such a rule in a class, in the player class, as you can see here, right? That's why when users want to use our class, they must use a comma to separate 2 textual values. Now you should feel good about yourself, because now you are not following other developers' rule. You can require your users to follow your rules now. That's a good feeling. We have created the first player. For the other players, we can follow the first player's model and then copy-paste to create the other players. Let me show you. Let's make a copy of the first statement and then create a new line. And then change the variable player1 to player2. The second player's name is Gina Smith. So let's change John to Gina. Change Williams to Smith. The third player is Eric Lee. So let's paste the line and then change player 1 to player 3. And then change John to Eric. Change Williams to Lee. This is great. We can accelerate our software development process, right? A very important feature of OOP is if we develop an individual out of a class, if we create an object by using a class, the object should have everything that a class has. So if we use the player class to create 3 players, they should all have the change last name method, right? Let's say the first player wants to change his last name from Williams to Richards. Then we can do player1. and then a dot, and then type in change last name, and then parentheses. Between parentheses, we type in 2 double quotes, since the new last name is also a textual value. So we should include the new last name by 2 double quotes as well. Between the 2 double quotes, let's type in Richards. This is his last name, new last name. And don't forget the semicolon at the end. And then if you copy the entire code, copy everything we develop here, and then paste the code into the online development system, click execute, you should be able to see the new last name of the first player. Let me show you the process. Let's copy the code we develop here. And then let's go to the online development system. You can access to this website by clicking the link I listed on eCollege. Let's remove the existing code and then paste our code into the system. And then click execute. And then you can see the new last name of the first player is changed to Richards. Suppose the second player also wants to change her last name from Smith to Hernandez. Do we need to develop the change last name method again? Not at all. We can copy the change last name method and then paste it into the code. Just change player 1 to player 2 and then change Richards to Hernandez. And then click execute. Now you can see the result. The first player's last name changed to Richards, and the second player's name changed to Hernandez. Why we didn't develop any code, but both players can have the change last name method? Because they are both copying the method from the class we developed here. This is the example of object-oriented programming.